Mother, man.
Hey, this is Tex, and you're listening to Murder Metal Mayhem.
Spreading faster than a case of the clap in a trailer court. Able to shatter eardrums within a 666-mile radius. A podcast more brutal than all the rest. It's Murder Metal Mayhem! This is Pete Altieri with Murder Metal Mayhem, and I'm doing this interview with a fellow co-host of the podcast, the guy we turn to when we cover cases from Texas or our infamous prison stories. I'm talking to none other than Tex. He's a favorite of our listeners. Thanks for taking the time out to chat with me, Tex, about the one and only CK today.
Hey, it's my honor, dude. Thanks for having me on. CK's a real good dude.
Yeah, for sure, man. I got to ask you, because I always do, what's the weather like over there in the great state of Texas?
Oh, 65, 70, something like that.
All right. Well, I don't feel so bad because it's 60 here today. So I don't feel like, usually awesome. Where I'm, my teeth are chattering through the microphone because it's friggin' cold here. So. All right. Well, you have been a listener to the podcast since we started doing it. And what sort of impact does CK have as a listener now? You're talking, you're listening to the show when we rolled it out. He wasn't on the first 3 episodes, but then he was. Mm-hmm. But what do you think about, CK's impact on the show?
Man, he was the metal segment there.
Yeah.
Like y'all say, he's the great metal motherfucker.
For sure.
He was the subject matter expert. Always knew what to say and to honor the bands and stuff. So yeah,
his wife was talking about the amount of research. He knew a lot about bands, but man, he just he put the work in and he just knew it. He worked off virtually no notes, which blows my mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say, she was talking about him not working off any notes. I don't know how you can do that with dates and albums and songs, band members coming in and out. I just don't see how he did that.
Me either.
That's amazing.
Because I'm using notes when I'm doing an interview, let alone reciting band, like you said, album titles, release dates, record labels, who was on the album, guests. Wow, just a wealth of information. So that's cool. Of course, he started out doing vinyl. Only was what we thought his expertise would be in, and then that just morphed into, well, why don't we do a feature band? That's a cool idea, and just kind of grew from there. But as a listener, what do you think makes the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast stand out from the others? Because there's a lot of them out there.
Well, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. And a lot of comedy podcasts too. You guys have you run the gamut of everything. You cover all the murder stuff. You have prison episodes with me on there.
Right.
You have a great metal following up there in the great North Tundra. And, and then the Mayhem segment is just pure D hell and confusion, mayhem, So
right. Yeah, that's cool.
All 3 segments.
Well, thanks, man. I know that we started doing it. We didn't really set out to do a comedy podcast. It is funny that we hit the top 200 Apple comedy podcast because it's a true crime heavy metal show.
Congratulations, man.
Thanks. But yeah, me and Chris, when we decided to start this thing, we both have a dark sense of humor. So I knew that would be a part of it, but not to the degree that it has. And then, adding CK, added a different sense of humor. And then Joey, of course, is just over the fucking top. And we have you on and you've got your own. So everybody kind of contributes in their own way, I think, to make it an interesting show. And the fact that it's weekly, boy, the work that goes into putting those episodes together there's a lot of moving parts there, and everybody's all to credit there, not just me by any stretch, but just a lot of reading, watching documentaries, which is stuff we all like to do anyway. But when you know you got an episode coming up on a particular topic, especially one you don't know much about, definitely time to sit down and, get schooled and figure it out. And then I got to figure out, how do I want to present it, especially a big case with lots of stuff. I don't want to get mired in the detail, and I don't want to just do the salacious stuff. So you got to kind of find that sweet blend of just enough background to make a listener want to keep listening to it. And like, that interview I did recently with Mick, where he said that, all the experts and the PhDs and all those, they have their place, certainly, and they add a lot to those documentaries. But he gets, sometimes the listeners just want to hear, man, that was fucked, and that was so funny. The way he said it with his accent, it just cracked me up. And he sent me a message after that came out, and he said he thought he sounded like Steve Irwin. He said he couldn't believe he didn't say crikey on the during the interview. But he was great, and as you know, Tex, it's weird hearing yourself recorded.
Yes, it really is.
I'm sure you went through the same thing. I know CK hated to hear his voice. So
did he really?
He did. He at first just thought he sounded. He just never really fully embraced that he fit in with the show until later. In the early days, he was very self-conscious and thought he sounded weird. And I'm like, no, man, everybody.
Oh, wow.
Everybody thinks that. Michael Shawback, still hates hearing his voice on there. And he's got a very unique, kind of loud voice, and he just thinks he sounds totally different than how he hears himself, which is the case with most people. Huh. Now, talking about the comedy part of this, I mean, you, of course, are in the murder segment typically when we have you on, so you're doing a little bit more of the serious, but we do kind of, blend in the humor in with it too. But what is it like now since you've been a part of Murder Metal Mayhem? I mean, how have you been enjoying being involved with it?
I've enjoyed it a lot. When we did the Murder in the Bayou?
Yeah, that was
episode,
great. That was a good one.
We started the whole commercial thing, and I got into it that first time with Robert Benoit.
That's right. That's right. Now, were you on any of those? I couldn't remember if you and CK ever did the same commercial.
Man, no, we didn't. But I know we were fixing to get into the whole weepy voice killer and Robert Benoit kind of squabble.
Oh yeah.
That never came to fruition, but
I know.
I wish we could have done that.
I know, I do too. When he started getting sicker and I knew he was going to be limited, I had thought, was there any way I could get him to just read a couple of bits? I could piece them in and work, and it just didn't work out. But I, like you, wished we would have done that, because we had talked about doing that. But being a part of it with, CK involved, and since, even though you guys weren't in the same segments together, I think it was just, cool to bring you in and multiple people. We've had different guests on, but of course you've been the one that I would consider part of the cast, not just a guest. So,
thank you.
Of course. Awesome. Now, those fake commercials were hilarious. And how did those go? This last round you did with Mrs. Tex there, that was funny.
Yeah, I recorded mine, and then I showed her the list of your parts that you kind of suggested she did. And she picked out a couple, and I was like, well, what's going to be your inspiration? And she was like, well, I don't know. What about this Unruh guy? And I was like, well, Pete said he is from New Jersey, and we got to watching some stuff on New Jersey and everything.
Oh, that was fucking great.
Then I was like, well, what about Janine from Ghostbusters? She's like, oh, yeah. And I was like, bam, that's it. And that's how it went.
How did she think they turned out?
Oh, she laughed her ass off, man.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, she thought they were awesome.
That's really cool.
Thanks for including her. That was
cool.
Of
course. Yeah, the next round we'll definitely do more. Always looking for new voices and stuff. And, getting CK in on those here as we roll out this tribute to CK, we'll definitely play some of the ones he did. He did a Weepy Voice commercial, too. I remember that one. And
Yeah.
so definitely going to play that. And yeah, it was funny. Like you had the Robert Benoit character, and you wanted to do the old Creole match with Weepy Voice Killer, which would have been great. So we'll definitely have to dig those out because Joey's been talking about that to bring back some of the matches, because we're going to get Michael Shaw back being Joe Ball, because he did that Joe Ball commercial. And so yeah, it'll be funny, I think. And we even thought about Sick Ripper too, because Joey's been doing that, that high voice Sick Ripper thing. So that might be really funny. But we record you doing the podcast the same way we did with CK, and you want to run through how we do that when we're talking now on Messenger, but you're recording yourself. So how does that go down for our listeners that might wonder how we do these remote?
Yeah, I bought myself a Yeti mic and some headphones, and that all came in a set. Amazon, Yahoo.
Yeah, right.
And, and then you suggested I download Audacity.
Right.
So I got playing with that, and what we do, we're on Facebook Messenger talking, and that's how we connect.
Right.
And I just hit record on Audacity, record the whole session. When we're over, I just hit stop and export it to an MP3 and
Dropbox it.
Yeah,
it works out really well. All these years I've listened to the last podcast on the left, and they have a guy remote, and I've always been amazed at how good he sounds, because with CK in the beginning, all we did was I recorded him on Messenger, which, sometimes the connection isn't that great, so it was very iffy, so then I heard them talking one day about how he had all these pillows in his closet, and he had a microphone and stuff, and something about him recording himself, and I'm like, that's how they do it. So then that's when I told CK, I'm like, dude, we got to do this a different way. So I got him the Yeti, but as you mentioned, that's a mic that is USB, so it's nice and easy. Plug it right into your computer, and boom. My son even used it with his cell phone. He's doing a gaming podcast now. He just started it.
Oh, cool.
And he used my Yeti with an adapter going right in his phone. So, anybody out there listening wants to do this on the cheap. It's not very expensive to record yourself in a good way. The Yeti microphones are really good. They're inexpensive, and you don't need the interface like I do with my mics, because in the studio it's all traditional cables with the XLR ends, and they got to go into something more than a computer. So it's a little more an added step. But with the Yetis and the other USB mics, it's pretty cool. Now, what kind of prep do you do? I know we talked about marveling at CK and how he was able to do it with virtually no notes, but what do you do when you're getting ready for a Murder Metal Mayhem podcast?
Man, I have to use notes, man.
I know, dude.
Yeah. I YouTube the hell out of some, the topic.
Yeah.
I don't do much reading, That's just not me, but...
there's a ton on YouTube. I do most of it that way, for sure.
Yeah, and I use Google a lot and just kind of research stuff. And I write down notes. If I need to do something technical, I look up policies, procedures.
Right.
Anything like that, but...
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
That's cool. I know the Dr. Death one was the last one you were on. That one is just crushing it with listens. We're at like 1,300 already on that one. So that one's doing better than most episodes. So yeah, people really dig on that case. It was, just come off the docuseries, so I think a lot of people familiar with Dr. Death from that, and the podcast they did too. So,
yeah.
But anything else you want to add, Tex, while we got you? Anything about CK or anything about being on the show in general? Anything you want to say to our listeners?
I really miss hearing CK on the metal segment, man. But
Yeah.
you guys are doing real well, passing the horns around.
Thanks.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, we figured that was the only way to do it, is like,
Yeah.
do we bring in another person, just for metal? And then it would have felt like we were replacing CK, which we didn't want to do. And so, yeah, we pass the horns around each week and try to, because we have varied tastes. So we're not all doing the same kind of bands,
Yeah, I like Chris's segment. What was it, a couple of weeks ago? Ugly Kid Joe?
Yeah.
That's what's up, man.
We had a few listeners today that they dug that one, and then we had one that we just read over the last episode made a comment about Joey doing body count, so that's cool.
Oh yeah,
that's,
yes.
That's
yeah.
That's cool to have those different perspectives. So I'm glad that you look at it that way. I know we've had quite a few listeners when I asked for people to comment about CK, and they were saying that they were glad that we were able to keep the show going, and they liked the way we, replaced his segment with the different slant on it, but us doing it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but CK too. I mean, he wasn't just all metal all the time.
right,
I mean, that Thin Lizzy episode.
right.
I thoroughly enjoyed that one.
Yeah, he's done
awesome.
some, more rock type, bands versus just straight metal. Which is very cool, and we have had him on a few different murder segments, not a bunch, but he did a handful of them. There were some cases he's like, "Oh, dude, you got to have me on that one," and of course, would oblige him. And then once he started getting more in the swing of it and finding his voice, so to speak, on the show, then that's when he's like, "Hey, why don't you have me on for Mayhem and keep me on?" So then we would keep him on through the whole thing, through the outro and everything. So, there's only a few times when he wasn't feeling up to it that he didn't do that. But most nights, I mean, shit, he was doing it from hospital beds, as you know. So it was just hardcore, man. He just did not want to miss it, which, that was just too awesome. So, well, very cool. Well, again, thanks for chatting with me, Tex. I know your personal time is important. You got a busy job, so I appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
You bet.
Mother, man.